April that you can just pass out just to, not that, kind of to go back to the beginning, what Dennis was talking about. I got involved in Hope in Action in 1986, and it was really called at that time the Hempstead County Resource Council. And the reason I got involved is because I worked with so many volunteers, you included, from the park standpoint. And somehow when they started getting things together to come up with a cycle to solve the homeless need here in Hope, I got involved at that point because they were getting all the volunteers involved. So from that point on, I've been involved. And we started out at, all you old timers will know that Hope in Action number 1, we call it, is the old Cane Courts out on 67 West. The office for Hope in Action was the office for the Cane Courts, and then I think there were actually 8 rooms for the Cane Courts, and we've subdivided that and made only 4 little apartments there for housing at that particular site. And Hope in Action, we actually own that property. We were able to buy that thanks to a grant. Oh, it's been a long, y'all may remember Hands Across America. I remember it's been so many years ago that made money available. So we actually physically bought that property. And then, when the Migrant Center moved from out on 67 West out to the interstate, all that property reverted back to the city of Hope. And it had 12 rooms and some showers and stuff like that. So we were able to work with the city of Hope, and they've made that available as Hope in Action number 2. Thanks, we pay $1 a year, I believe, for that. And we operate that facility. So with that, you'll see the figures on there, and that's because we've been so active in the last few years. We've got a lot of federal grants. We make a real effort of keeping really good records. And one other thing, I guess to backtrack even on our room that we're building at Hope in Action number 2, we're actually also building 2 offices adjacent to that, because we have found out that we really come across a lot of sensitive information that we've gathered for these individuals, and we want to make it a little more secure. So we're having one of these, beside the freezer room, will be an office for Hope in Action, so we can keep all our records in there. And also adjacent to that will be an office for domestic violence. They've moved their office out there. They lost their lease wherever they were downtown, and so we put them out there with us, and it's really a nice compatible office space with those folks, because we come in contact with a lot of folks who have a domestic violence problem. So I think that's going to be a nice addition to Hope in Action number 2. But as you can see on this sheet, we go through a lot of folks. There are a lot of folks in Hope and Hempstead County who have lots of problems, as Cliff was talking about. So, and roughly that's just for the month of April, and that's and those values on there. Actually, we didn't spend all that much money. That's the value of that if we were to have credit for it. We use FEMA comes out with we do get FEMA money through, and that's the way they want it to be figured. And we, again, back to record keeping, we try to keep the records to accommodate them. We've gotten 2 grants through the state emergency shelter grant program that keeps in business. We get, I know yesterday one of the questions was from the Lions Club, they wanted to know where we get our money. And again, from grants. When we started the Hempstead County Resource Council, it actually started through the Ministerial Alliance. And we have 10 or 12 churches that are pretty active. They provide money every month. I would think that with all the churches, we will have donations of them about $1,500 a month from the different churches. But the whole concept of the Resource Council to begin with was because all the churches were being bombarded with needs, from homelessness to food to other problems like that. And they thought some folks at that time were abusing the situation. They'd go from one church to another to solve that problem. The churches got together and we came up with Hope in Action at the time. So when someone came to a church with a need, they would not help them. They would send them to Hope in Action because that church had Hope in Action. And that's the general concept of how it originally got started. Now some of the churches have still helped, and they don't always send them to Hope in Action, but that was a general concept, and it has work pretty well. And as you can see, again, we go through a lot of folks for whatever reason. We figured that over the course of the year, it's averaged about 3,000 people a year that we help. Now, and in that number, there's a lot of duplications. We may help them more than once, and it may be the same person that we might have helped 3 or 4 times. But we try to keep some pretty good guidelines on how many nights they can stay and other help that we can provide. Food, we give out a tremendous amount of food, and it was just a couple weeks ago. The post office collected food, and they brought us 3,000 pounds of food. So our shelves are stocked right now, but we'll go through it pretty quick, and then there'll be others come forward. So besides cash donations, the City of Hope, you're talking about the citizens of Hope, have come through all the time and bringing food in different ways. Even out at number 2, again, we have a lot of folks who are staying out there for a long period of time, longer than the 3 or 4 days. It's called transitional housing. So when you're out that way, you'll see we got 5 mobile homes or RVs, the smaller ones that we got from FEMA we put out there. And we make those available to folks who don't have homes, but we'll eventually start charging them. And $100 a month. And as the longer they stay, the more rent it is, with the idea of trying to get them to move out on their own. So when they're capable of paying rent at that particular point, as it goes up, then they'll eventually move out on their own. So we kind of had to do that, or with our different grants, this is a technique that the federal government has included in some of these grant operations to try to get folks out on their own and away from homeless shelter. So we think we've been pretty successful over the years, and it's thanks. I know the Kiwanis Club, y'all have. I meant to say, I'm not here asking for any money today. Normally, I guess I'm associated with that, but we're pretty sound off. Not that we're always needing money, but thinking about the future. But we're pretty sound. Like this grant from SWEPCO that came at a time when we just didn't know that that would even be a possibility. So that's the kind of thing that comes up. We're a United Way agency. We get money through the United Way that helps match those other federal grants that we have access to. So you can see that we've been, again, in business a long time. I never thought we'd make it this far. But I think we're on pretty solid footing, thanks to the help from all the churches, and the City of Hope's been so good to us and making that available to the old migrant center out there. It's really a perfect setup for what we are doing. I know we're something I almost overlooked, but it's been 3 years ago now. We moved in a double-wide trailer out there for women and children only, and they can stay up to 6 weeks, and it's staying full all the time with the different problems that they have and whatever it is. One thing of interest, I think that I know that, again, I didn't realize it was so important, but the Lions Club thought it was pretty important yesterday. We only have 1 part-time paid employee, because everybody else is a volunteer. Mae Delaney, who runs our Hope in Action number 1, she is a part-time employee. We don't even pay her full-time. We just pay her kind of minimum wage for so many hours. It's not even full-time. Out at number 2, Helen Byers, she lives on site. She's a volunteer. We don't pay anybody out there. So it's we think the money that we get really goes a long ways and going directly to the ones that need it, and that's the ones who have a problem and are hungry or don't have a place to live that night, or there's so many reasons for folks to come see us. So we think we've been able to pretty well take care of all of them. One thing I remembered, it's been several years ago now, before we had number 2 out here, that someone needed a place to stay, and we were full. So we told them, well, we can't help you. Well, from that we learned our lesson, and even if we are full, we'll put them in a motel if we have to. But we don't, and that hadn't happened in a long time since we've had access to the old migrant center. Now we have a lot more housing up there. So